Okay, these are the 9.3 notes, double angle, half angle, and reduction formulas. This is page 2 of the notes. So we are just going to dive right in. Exercise 2, example 2 here. It says evaluate the expressions. We want to find sine 2x, cosine 2x, and tangent 2x. Given that we know that sine of x is negative 3 over 4, and then we know that x is between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, which puts that in the fourth quadrant. Yeah? So 3 pi over 2 straight down here, 2 pi all the way around, so we are drawing our triangle in the fourth quadrant. Right angle made with the x-axis. Here is our x. We know that sine opposite over hypotenuse is negative 3 over 4. Here's our negative 3. Our hypotenuse is never negative, so there's our 4. And so let's find the length of this side x. I got x squared plus negative 3 squared equals 4 squared. X squared plus 9 equals 16. So x squared equals 7, which means our x equals the square root of 7. So I am going to list everything over to the right here, so I don't have to think too hard later. Sine of x is negative 3 over 4. We already had that. Cosine of x is the square root of 7 over 4. And then the tangent of x is going to be negative 3 over the square root of 7. We don't like having that radical in the denominator, so we're going to rationalize the denominator. And we get a tangent that is negative 3 square roots of 7 over 7. Okay, so let's start with the sine here. Sine of 2x equals 2 times the sine of x times the cosine of x. 2 times our sine of x is negative 3 over 4. Our cosine of x is square root of 7 over 4. Multiplying straight across, we get negative 6 square roots of 7 over 16, and we can reduce that. Negative 3 square roots of 7 over 8. I am not going to crank that into a calculator and get a decimal approximation. We want this exact value. Okay, so let's go with the cosine 2x. I have both cosine and sine, so I'm going to go with cosine squared x minus sine squared x. You're welcome to try a different version. Make sure we both get the same thing. Cosine is square root of 7 over 4. Going to square that. Sine is negative 3 over 4. We're going to square that. Square root of 7 squared is 7. 4 squared is 16. Minus 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is still 16. I get negative 2 over 16 or negative 1 over 8. Tangent 2x. Again, I'm going to write that out. That's 2 times the tangent of x over 1 minus tangent squared x. 2 times our tangent of x is not pretty. Negative 3 square roots of 7 over 7. I don't know why that came out like a 6. All over 1 minus negative 3 square roots of 7 over 7 squared. I get negative 6 square roots of 7 all over 7. See, let's do the second part first. I get 3 squared is 9. Square root of 7 squared is 7. 9 times 7 is 63. Over 7 squared is 49. There's a minus there. 1 I'm going to go ahead and write as 49 over 49. So negative 6 square roots of 7 over 7 over 49 minus 63 is 14 over 49. I can factor a 7 out of both of those and put this over 2 sevenths, which means that the sevenths part cancels. I get negative 6 square roots of 7 over 2, negative 3, square roots of 7. It's in the fourth quadrant, so tangent should be negative. Sorry, this is the double angle. Never mind, ignore that. And there we go. Exercise 3. We've got the sine of A is 5/8 with theta in quadrant 1. We want the cosine of 2 theta. -6, you know what? I screwed this up. Something's not right here. -14, -2, negative. This should be a positive 3/7. I'm sorry. So go back, and I knew something wasn't sitting quite right. If we double angle x, chances are it's now putting us into quadrant 3. If both sine and cosine are negative, our tangent should be positive. And keep in mind, when we talk about this angle 2x, it's the same for all three of these. It's the same for the cosine, the sine, and the tangent. Okay, so the rules of the quadrant should still apply, and we can kind of guess at what quadrant we're ending up in. Sometimes you can't tell. Okay, exercise 3. Sine of alpha equals 5/8. Theta is in quadrant 1. So I'm going to draw my picture here. Five over 8. And then realizing here, if I want cosine of 2a, let's think for a minute. I have this version, cosine squared a minus sine squared a. I could find the third side of my triangle and figure out what cosine of a is. I have got this version that's 1 minus 2 times sine squared a. And you know what? I already know what the sine of a is. So this is my winner. I got 1 minus 2. Sine of a is 5/8 squared. 1 minus 2 times 25 over 64. I need a common denominator of 64. So I got 64 over 64 minus 2 times 25 gives me 50 over 64. 14 over 64. And I end up with 7 over 32. Sometimes, because we are used to drawing the triangle to find all three sides, we end up doing more work than we need to. So, always good, take a breath. Make sure we're not doing any more than we have to.